that this summer we can go big. We're promising Isaac, Gordon's, Bruno's that we're going to show ambition this summer, and I think we will sign 2 or 3 players, and we're honestly only 2 or 3 players away from securing top 4 on a consistent basis for me.
If Arsenal and Newcastle agreed a £120 million deal, just let's pretend they did for whatever reason, does Isak say yes, do you think?
No.
You don't think he does?
I don't think 120 is even enough.
Who do you honestly feel has the more, let's call it exciting future? Of the next 2, 3, 5 years, which club is looking prime for doing some special things, do you think? Or more prime?
I think if you keep Arteta, then it's Newcastle.
Oh, really? You think he's the hindrance?
I do, yeah. You hear branded about quite a bit this week after the PSG defeat that you're the nearly men. That's what we got told in the late 90s with Kevin Keegan.
Yeah.
You know, you're finishing second, you're blowing 12-point leads, you're getting beaten FA Cup finals 2 years in a row. That's what was happening in Newcastle, and you just see a bit of that with Arsenal. I think it's big game stage fright under Arteta.
So the way to really hurt us is to say we're Pochettino's Tottenham.
I wouldn't go that far.
Welcome back to AFTV, everyone. We know Arsenal host Newcastle. It's a bigger game than we thought it was going to be. And I'm here with Matty Renton to discuss it all. But you know what we want to discuss? Not so much the game, the future of these clubs. Arsenal, if I say so myself, a massive football club, not getting to those expectations. Newcastle, a massive football club, a different journey, very much on the up. Looking like a second season in 3 that you can get Champions League football. A trophy to your name for this season. It's, especially with the undercurrent of the Isak stuff and other conversations, there's a really interesting story with both clubs kind of developing. Let's just talk about Newcastle first, though. How have these last 3-4 years been? I mean, it must have been an unbelievable journey.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, the turnaround from a few years ago, from fighting relegations to being happy to get 17th and get knocked out of the cup in the 3rd round. We went from an owner with no ambition to the absolute other end of the scale, with owners that have got every ambition to win everything. That's their words. Yeah. You know, they want to win Champions League, they want to win Premier Leagues. We've got off the ground now, finally, first domestic trophy in 70 years. That's a huge monkey off our shoulder. So I think it's a springboard, hopefully, to bigger and better things.
And it was also the manner in which you won it, knocking out Chelsea, demolishing Arsenal, which was painful to watch for us. And then in the final, Liverpool never looked in it till that kind of last minute, and then it felt like it might get frantic. But in total control, and you'd think, I'm watching Arsenal struggling when it comes to the kind of crunch moments, live up to the levels that we've seen maybe, you know, throughout a league campaign or through, you know, previous rounds. Has it surprised you how much these players have stepped up to what was an incredibly pressurised situation? Because, of course, there was a Carabao Cup final defeat a couple of years before. Or maybe did that fuel it? Having lost one, maybe it helped with the other one. How do you kind of reflect on that?
I think it did help. I think it was a huge learning curve, because you look at that team from 2 years ago and it was nearly the same. You know, Wilson came out and Isak came in, and it was obviously that's a huge change in itself. But the core group of players was still there, you know. Yeah. And I think the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, who now took the armband, learned massively from that defeat 2 years ago. It felt like that game probably came too soon for those players then. It was a little bit too soon, too much pressure. But this time they seem to be dead up for it. They rode off the wave and they believe in themselves a lot more than 2 years ago now. I think that comes with big games. I think, you know, you're going to the San Siro last year and getting a point, smashing PSG at home. Yeah. This breeds confidence, and I think it was just timing. The time was perfect this year. And coming up against Liverpool was a worry because of how well they were doing. But, you know, people sleep on the Carabao Cup and it still gets diminished. But we beat Nottingham Forest away, beat Chelsea at home, beat you over 2 legs, and beat Liverpool in the final. That's some run, that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I always say with the Carabao Cup, when people try to diminish it, I say, okay, cool, if you want to talk domestic trophies, whatever, but I haven't seen Arsenal lift a trophy since 2020. We haven't lifted loads and loads over the time I've been an Arsenal fan. I would have loved some Carabao Cups. I've seen us in a few finals. But also, you know, you look at things like the Conference League, for example. Ultimately, the Carabao Cup is still entered with Liverpool, with Man City, with all these clubs in it. So you've got to do something right to win it. Arsenal haven't been getting over the line with silverware. And I think what I think is difficult for Arsenal fans, and now we're going to get into kind of the meat of the conversation, is you've got a Newcastle been on the rise. You've got an Arsenal that I think will always, to a degree, and you can't always rely on this, but will kind of hold a certain stature in football because of the size of the club, the history. But there was a point at which Arsenal fans and maybe people in the Arsenal media were talking about an Alexander Isak. Before we go into the details of that deal, do you feel as a Newcastle fan a little bit like you can't just pick who you want from us anymore. That's not where we are. We're looking side by side, if anything. Is that how it feels from a Newcastle perspective?
It does, honestly, without obviously being disrespectful. I can't see why you would go to Arsenal at the minute. Obviously, Arsenal, let's be honest, are a way bigger club than Newcastle. They've got a bigger global appeal. They've had way more recent success, apart from obviously this season.
Yeah.
And it's there. And you know, you're more likely to get Champions League football than us. But this year, we're both going to get Champions League football, I hope. We've just won a trophy. We've got big intentions this summer. We haven't been able to sign anybody for 3 windows now because of PSR. We're actually in a really good state now after selling a few players. That this summer we can go big. We're promising Isaacs, Gordons, Brunos that we're going to show ambition this summer. And I think we will sign 2 or 3 players. And we're honestly only 2 or 3 players away from securing top 4 on a consistent basis for me.
Yeah.
I think you add that into the mix of the players I've already got. I think we're so close to being side by side. 2, honestly, challenging for the league as well. Not winning it, but getting right up there.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that because... So this is what I find really interesting about the conversation. I was writing these questions down. I honestly didn't know how I felt about it. Because on the one hand, let's take Isak. I think he stays. For all Newcastle fans watching, I think he's going to remain at Newcastle. I think he'll get Champions League football. That was the key. I think if you hadn't got Champions League football, there was maybe a conversation. But I think you will. And the silverware and the moment he had getting that goal. If Arsenal and Newcastle agreed a £120 million deal, just let's pretend they did for whatever reason, does Isak say yes, do you think?
No.
You don't think he does?
I don't think 120 is even enough.
Okay, whatever number you want to put on it, but do you think Isak would say yes if a deal were agreed?
I suppose if the club accepted it, then he would probably think, well, yeah, there's the intention there as well to go. I don't think he would push for it. I don't think he would demand a move. I think the only way Alexander Isak leaves is if Liverpool or Real Madrid, someone like that comes in, someone who's guaranteed almost to win leagues and go far in Champions Leagues and stuff. I can't see him. He's linked with Chelsea for big money maybe, or Arsenal still. I don't think he takes that approach. I think it has to be a huge game-changing club to come in from.
I think who needs a striker? I mean, Real Madrid might at some point, especially if they lose Rodrigo. Barcelona, I think with Lewandowski aging, that's
Barcelona's
a really
linked.
good fit.
I could see that.
That's a really good fit.
Yeah, I could see that.
Whether they have the money, but that's a really good fit. See with the Arsenal one, and I'm trying to take my sort of Arsenal tinted glasses off with this, but it's like, I don't think you'd ever push for the move. I agree with that, but I still, maybe I'm delusional. I still think there is a degree of like, oh, Arsenal have just knocked on the door. I don't know why. And I think that's why Champions League football was so key for you guys and keeping those players. And if you say you're going to go reinvest, I think it's going to be that ambition. But I don't know. There's always been, maybe I've just been fed this kind of media narrative, which is probably nonsense, that there's this kind of like, this destined to Isak will play for Arsenal. But
the
it's
number
just
14,
all that
like
kind of
Henry,
stuff, right?
All of that.
Yeah, exactly. All that kind of stuff. But the reality is that you look at the trajectory of the clubs, this is the first season for a while Arsenal haven't been progressing. Mm-hmm. I just wonder if Arsenal wanted to make Isak the statement, would he be tempted? I think you'd have to not have Champions League football for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. I think it could be a conversation if we didn't have Champions League. Maybe even if we didn't win that cup, because he might turn around and say, "Oh, we've lost another final there. We're really going to be that team to do it. Can I really achieve things here?" But everything this season, winning a trophy, getting Champions League, is pointing to him thinking, I'll see how the next season goes, next 2 years, give it 2 years. We could be talking again in a year's or two's time and you'd be like, fair enough, he's going to want to leave. But right now, everything points to the right path for Newcastle.
Yeah, my worry is also, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm not just saying this because you're in front of me. I worry he's playing for actually a somewhat more exciting team at the moment.
Definitely this season.
Gordon and Isak with Saka is probably the combined front three of the two teams. That's 2 Newcastle players. If you're going to combine midfield, for me it's probably Guimaraes, Tonali and Rice. But that's 2 Newcastle players. Now Ødegaard of last season, for me, gets in there. But that's not the Ødegaard we're talking about this season. And football changes very, very quickly. Joe Linton will probably be looking at this going, well, excuse me. So, and then some people vouch for Partey. But my point is, there's not that gap in player quality. If anything, I'm really concerned about the areas where you guys are stronger than us. And I think that is one thing. You can't even go, Isak's going, well, I really want to play with that group. Because it's like, we've got a very good group, but Newcastle have too. I suppose it leads me to this next question, which is the future of these clubs. Who do you honestly feel has the more, let's call it exciting future? of the next 2, 3, 5 years, which club is looking primed for doing some special things, you think? Or more primed?
I think if you keep Arteta, then it's Newcastle.
Really? You think he's the hindrance?
I do, yeah.
Wow.
I think it's Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe's got his number. I think Eddie Howe's a better manager.
Really?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, from what he did with Bournemouth, taking them from the bottom of League 2 all the way to the top
His
8 in the
CV's
Premier
better.
League.
I agree. His CV's
winning
better,
a cup
for
this
sure.
year.
Yeah.
I know Arteta did 5 years ago. But with Newcastle, I think we play some of the best football, some of the best intensity, the best crowd, the best fans. That's another thing with these players. Love playing in front of the St James Park atmosphere. I think Newcastle will overtake Arsenal if you keep Arteta. I really do, because for me, he's the one he is in charge of transfers. Yeah, does he get the final change?
He's got a say.
On
Well,
like Havertz for 65 million, and
you know what it is. Whenever we sign a player, they credit him, but whenever something isn't happening, the media sort of talk about everything else, and it's not. So it's hard to know.
Because the mad thing is that you spent more on like Kai Havertz than Isak.
Yes.
Raheem Sterling. Are you paying his wages or is it Chelsea?
Something like that.
So if you're paying his wages,
quite a lot
he's
of it.
probably earning
Or maybe half of
triple what Gordon and Tonali earn. So it's these decisions that you need to sort out: wages, transfer fees, getting the right players. Every year you say about a striker, no one ever signs. So these decisions, and then I look at Arteta the other night. The tactics. Where's the bravery? Where's the aggression? You're bringing on fullbacks instead of strikers, or players that could change the game.
I thought we played well though in that leg in the second leg against PSG. I just think when it came to rolling the dice, he doesn't quite.
Yeah, you bottled. I think the dice was bottled because why is Wanyeri not coming on? Why is these?
Well, that was weird.
Flair players, attacking players. Someone who is Calafiori going to come on and get you through the PSG?
But he did all right. He made a difference, Calafiori. I get what you're saying. I think I hear you. But I wouldn't be an Arsenal fan if I didn't push you on some of it. Arteta's both simultaneously got us to where we are, yet a lot of the hurdles we fall at, you can kind of draw things back to him. So I'm Arteta in. I want him to have another year. I think he's a very, very good manager, but I sort of see the questions. I think one thing I'd say about him, though, is I don't know how this will come across. There's no question Eddie Howe has a better CV. What he did with Bournemouth, getting them promoted, keeping the Premier League for so long, playing the football they did, and then taking Newcastle from where you guys were in a relegation battle. Were you 19th?
19th when you took over.
Unbelievable. And in 4 years, he's delivered Champions League twice, because I think you're going to get it, and a trophy. Unbelievable turnaround. Yeah, exactly. And the investment's been great. Like you said, Gordon and Isak, where the money's gone. I do think, though, that step from third, fourth to first, which is the jump that Arteta's trying to make, from Champions League quarters and semis to actually winning it, I think that's a huge jump. Like almost bigger than going, I appreciate I went from 19th, but almost bigger than going like 6th or 7th to 3rd. I almost think that jump from competing to getting it done is huge. That's why it's interesting you say Eddie Howe's a better manager. I think I'd be an idiot to sort of try and disagree with that massively. I'd love to see Eddie Howe with the pressure of, I've just been praising that group. Like, compete. Like, can you compete with the very best now? Do you think Eddie Howe can get there?
I think he can, yeah. I
think he'll get it over the line?
I've just had a conversation with Robbie on my channel where we both agreed he slept on because he's English.
I agree with that.
Totally
I completely agree
on
with that.
Obviously, the next step, like you say, is massive because then you're coming up against the juggernauts, aren't you? You're coming up against Pep City. But look at what Slot did in his first season with Liverpool.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? No one said they were going to win the league.
Yeah,
he's took over Arteta and phase whatever, and Slot's in his debut season.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Arteta, he's not going to be the one to transform Arsenal to get them where you think you can. Premier League, Champions League, all of that. You're going to have to, because the group's kind of there. You still need one or two players. I think attitude and stuff's questionable at times, but you're close. And with players like Skelly coming through, there's huge chances there, but you need someone else.
Football fandom is so bloody interesting because I've spent the last few weeks critical of Arteta, critical of Arsenal, critical of where we are. And yet I hear these things and I'm sort of like, well, no, hold on here, because you care, right? Because you don't, we want to believe we have some of the best in class. We want to believe we're there to make that step. If I'm asking myself really honestly, I think you're being a bit harsh on Arteta. I think he's 5 years into management, period. That's it. And to have got us competing for 2 years against Man City, this year falling off, but doing what we did against Real Madrid, you've got to feel for someone 5 years into his career that there's still so much more for him to learn and so much more experience to be had. That's why for me, whether it's with Arsenal or not, I think he's going to get there as a manager.
I think you do have to give him one more year, because maybe I am being harsh. You've obviously had injuries this year and stuff as well. The Champions League run was very good, but there's just them in-game decisions for me from him. He just needs to be more courageous and a bit more attacking. But
I can hear that.
You got to give him this summer. If you're saying a Gyökeres, you're saying the top striker, not Isak, then that might be the game-changing one. We've been seeing that for ages. So it's a big season for Arteta next year to prove himself, because I think the similar thing with Eddie Howe. Listen, if we had lost that another final, you could be sitting there going, Eddie Howe's not the man. You're the Nelly club, another final, another defeat. Maybe you should get someone a bit more experience. So it's easy to say once you know. Fascinated
to see how much the individual quality of just a certain player. You mentioned Slot there. Slot's done a brilliant job. Let me not diminish any of it. I'll add to that. I was about to say but. Let me not say but. And Salah's had a generational campaign. The numbers have been unbelievable. Eddie Howe has done a brilliant job, and Isak has been so key. And I just want Arteta to have his and guy. And I think it's Saka, but littered throughout, like I've mentioned, Guimaraes, Tonali, and I think your back four is great, with Van Dijk and Alisson. I just want Arteta to have a little bit more of those players you can rely on, because I honestly think Saka and maybe... the more I say it, Saka, Rice, we've got centre-backs, but really attacking quality, I think, is where it's going to make a difference for us. Let me then heap the pressure on you guys, because I agree. I think the trajectory for Newcastle's great. I think Eddie Howe slept on. He's a brilliant manager, and I've just waxed lyrical about a lot of your players I think are great. When does it become a question of start knocking on that door for the title? And the audacity of an Arsenal fan, right, to ask. I appreciate that. But when does that question come, and when does it become a case of... the money's there, the players are a lot of them are there, but still more to add, and the manager you rate very highly. When does that expectation come, and when do Newcastle fans alter their? I don't want to say, I hate the word standards in that sense, but their kind of like default position of where this club should be. I'm just curious what you think of that.
I think we're going to surprise a lot of people next year, especially for the first 4 or 5 months. I think we might be right up there.
Really?
I really do. I think we might be right up there. But if we're in Champions League, all it takes is 1 or 2 injuries, and then it might start to derail a little bit. Fine. But this summer's huge. I'm hearing good things that we will have money to invest. Yeah. We aren't going to sell any of our star players. So that could be pivotal, really, the transfer window. Of course it should. But I think next year will be a great opening 4 or 5 months. Then we'll probably end up finishing 4th again, 5th again, which will be absolutely fine. I think 2-3 years' time, answer your question. I think in 3 years' time, we should be hopefully challenging if things go to plan, which again, is a big if, because you've got to keep these big players.
Every Newcastle fan has every right to flood the comments with, James, your team haven't got over the line. Stop chatting to us when you've been on a 5-year process, and I hear all that. But let me just flip the narrative for a second. Go, Champions League 2 years out of 3. Won a Carabao Cup, the players you got. I would think maybe not necessarily next season, but in the next 2 years. I mean, the resources are there, and the fan base is there. The size of club is there. The Newcastle carry weight, like this big cities, big football club. Like, the ingredients are there. I would think 3 years is almost too long, but let me not, because I appreciate where you've come from, and I appreciate my club are not the flag bearers for where, or standard bearers, should I say, for where a journey towards a title should be necessarily. We've taken our time with it and we still haven't got there. There's an interesting rivalry, I think, building between Arsenal and Newcastle. Yeah. I've always had so much time for Newcastle, but there's been needle in recent games. And I think this has been going on a good 2-3 years. From when we beat you there 2-0. No, the 0-0. No, the 0-0 at the Emirates. Do you remember when you guys, it was like prime Atletico Madrid. The 0-0 there. Then we beat you 2-0 and we were in a little bit of a title run, but we kind of blown it by that point. Then, we basically, I think there was a 4-1 win at the Emirates, but other than that, you've had our number. Mm-hmm. I think 3 wins in a row at St James's Park, having been able to score there, knocking us out cleanly out of the cup competitions. Obviously, the 2-0 win at the Emirates was a part of that. Do you feel there's a rivalry building between the two teams? As almost the new up-and-comers doing their thing, the Isak narrative, the Arteta Eddie Howe thing? What do you make of it?
I think there definitely is. It does come a lot from the Isak stuff. I think it's very much fueled by the media narrative that it was inevitable he's going to leave and sign for Arsenal and wear the 14 and do a knee slide at the Emirates, copying off Henry and all that. And I think we've obviously enjoyed that a little bit. Isak scoring there, and then you mentioned it. It was all kicked off really from the dark arts, that 0-0. Frustrating, and Arteta coming out and saying certain things that obviously upset Eddie Howe and Jason Tindon, you had a go at them, and then at our place, where we got a huge win over you in the season, we stayed up. And then,
of course, that I remember that.
Yeah.
That ended our top 4 hopes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So there's just little bits there that have kind of bubbled over, and it's kind of boiling a bit. And then the semi-final, obviously, 2 legs there, 4-0 to us on aggregate. Arteta blaming the ball, all that sort of stuff. It's kind of fueling a lot, isn't it? And, you know, it's great to see. Listen, I like being in a conversation with Arsenal, you know. 3 years ago, I was in a conversation with West Brom and Norwich, so it's a nice change, you know, went from Burnley to Arsenal. So it's a big leap, it's a big bonus.
I like the matchup. I like the tactical matchup of the two teams because these are 2 of the most physical teams in the league. For where they are on the table, you tend to, I mean, if you go over the last 10, 20 years, you associate physicality a little bit more with maybe the bottom half of the table. I think maybe that's an unfair comment of mine to make, but these are 2 teams that are trying to play on the ball, but also intensity is a huge part of what they do. I don't think Arsenal will be able to live with Newcastle because you're probably the only team in the league we can't live with physically. I honestly think everyone else, listen, on the ball we might not be as good. A lot of them we are. But that's the one thing we can't do against you guys. We can't be physical.
The physicality of Joe Linton, of Big Dan Bain. And do you not look back at those semi-finals, though? It's kind of what we mentioned earlier about Arteta and is he the man and stuff. Like, not showing anything over 2 legs in a semi-final. That must be fans thinking, what's going on here? Why aren't we even scoring? Why aren't we posing any threats in a 2-legged semi-final?
It's difficult because I think you deserve to win that game, but I also think we could have been 2-0 up after the first 20 minutes. Like, I think we started really well. Martinelli hitting the post, Timber missing a big chance. I think there was a Partey moment. I can't remember. Maybe did he play? I think he did. Like, and that's kind of the story of Arsenal. It's like when getting over the line, when you look back at why we didn't win the league last season, it's because Trossard missed a massive chance in the first half against Villa where we were all over them. But we ended up losing that game 2-0. We were poor in the second half. Anyone remembers that we lost and we didn't look like scoring when we needed to. But kind of a lot of the good work had been done to maybe win that game early in the game. I think that's true of the Newcastle first leg. I think that's true of the PSG game. I think we could have won that first leg. We could have lost it 3-0. But I think on another, we could have won it 2-1. There were chances there. But it's kind of, at what point do the same, we just missed chances? At what point is that our fault? And then I look at Isak, took his moment at the Emirates, took his moment at Wembley. Gordon as well. These players put GA on the board. They get numbers, they get output. And we don't have that. And Newcastle do.
Are you worried that Arsenal are becoming the Newcastle of the 90s? The entertainers, you know, Kevin Keegan's Premier League runner-up, FA Cup runners-up, you know, nice football, which was last season more, so not so much this season. But for me, it's looking that way. It's looking like, you know, you hear it branded about quite a bit this week after the PSG defeat that you're the nearly men. That's what we got told in the late 90s with Kevin Keegan. You know, you're finishing second, you're blowing 12-point leads, you're getting beaten FA Cup finals 2 years in a row. That's what was happening in Newcastle, and you just see a bit of that with Arsenal. I think it's big game stage fright under Arteta.
The way to really hurt us is to say we're Pochettino's Tottenham.
I wouldn't go that far.
Because they were in conversations and never got over the line. But dare I say, they made a few more finals than we did. So Arsenal fans, don't get upset about that. I'm only just giving the facts. Like, we are not clearing enough hurdles. However, this is a young enough group that still, and I know people point to the money we've spent, 700 million over 6 years or whatever. Others have spent more. Like, they actually have. That's the crazy thing about football. I still think I'm ready to see one more like version of this team that has Arteta's perfect striker, that has a left winger, that has a little bit more guile in midfield. And then I think we'll know. I think there's kind of one more year to see that. And you can't keep being the nearly men. I know we can always talk about where we've come from and everything, but Arsenal Football Club are, you know, it's in our history to compete and to win these honours, and we haven't for a long, long time. And it's all well and good getting us closer because we were so far away, but the point is it's getting over the line. So you ask a good question there. I can't pretend it hasn't come up in a podcast conversation every now and again. Turkish in the room, and we've talked about it. But I think I'm still confident this team can get something done. I really do. I think they can win silverware. It's just with every passing year, of course, that doubt just sort of starts to creep in a little bit more. Let's get a prediction for you for the game. But also I want a prediction for next season, when Newcastle will finish. Really curious to know what you think.
We're going to go prediction for next season first, or?
Yeah, let's do that. Hard to know with the windows and everything, but what's your expectation is more?
I would say fourth.
Okay.
I think finishing fourth would be nice.
I thought you'd have gone for third. Interesting.
It's going to be up for grabs. I mean, you expect Man City to go again,
Yeah.
don't you? I mean, they're starting to find their feet after the January signings.
Yeah.
Liverpool with 2 out of the 3 signing new deals. They're going to make 2 or 3 signings. You
Yeah.
are. So, yeah, I think close battle, probably fourth.
Okay.
Listen, I'd love to see where my main thing is, like, keep this trophy run going. Do you know what I mean?
Get
So
another
can
one.
we defend the Carabao, or for me, even better, let's win the FA Cup? Because people will always diminish the Carabao, and even if you win the FA Cup, people will say, it's not what it used to be.
Yeah.
No one takes it seriously. So you cannot win, really, can you? But for me, if we could add another major on it,
Ignore them
or
all.
even, go far in it, would be nice. But I suppose, thinking long term, you do have to make sure you get yourself Champions League football to keep the likes of your Isaacs at the club. So
Yeah.
a good European run as well. Obviously, if we do get Champions League, I would say that's actually the top.
Yeah.
Forget your FA Cups and Carabaos. Imagine if we could go for what you have just done.
Yeah.
Would be fantastic, because I thoroughly enjoyed myself at the San Siro 2
Yeah.
years ago.
Don't blame you. Don't blame you. And a prediction for the game?
2-1 Newcastle. I think a 2-1 win. Isaac to do it again.
I think 1-1. I'm not confident we win, but let's see.
You'll take the lead, and then we'll come back.
Something like that. We've been blowing a lot of leads at the Emirates. Matty, let everyone know where they can find you.
You can find us on the Magpie channel, TV on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. Thanks
There
very
you go.
much.
You've been brilliant, man. The links are in the comment section below. Big thanks to Matty for joining us. And big thanks for all tuning in. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Was I too nice? Was I too harsh? I want to know, Arsenal fans who are feeling protective about the club, let us know. What is it? What can we really kind of hold on to in terms of building on it and actually being competitive with the very best? Because Newcastle will be there, make no mistake about it. Big thanks for joining. We'll catch you very soon.